Grandpa's voice cut through her shrill accusations like a battle horn. The morning sunlight danced on the pine-fresh air as I watched my grandfather, a retired Marine with a spine of steel and a heart full of quiet dignity, step forward. Karen's finger jabbed at the guest's face, her voice laced with entitlement as she barked her lies to the 911 dispatcher. That a stranger had broken into her neighbor's property, that she feared for her life. In that instant, the world recoiled at her audacity. Without a hint of hesitation, Grandpa removed his brimmed hat, revealing a shock of silver hair swept back like a warrior's crest. He spoke calmly, recounting every detail the HOA rulebook demanded, exposing Karen's fabricated charges as nothing more than a spiteful ploy to reclaim her warped sense of control. The dispatcher's tone shifted mid-sentence, uncertainty lacing her words. Karen's face contorted with outrage as she stumbled over her next lie, unable to outpace the hard evidence Grandpa produced. A guest pass, a property deed, and a neighbor's affidavit. The transformation was instantaneous. A crowd that had gathered to witness her spectacle now found itself leaning in toward Grandpa's steady gaze. He guided the deputies through the cabin porch, where Karen's accusations unraveled beneath his meticulous testimony. As the officers took notes, her face flushed, shame and rage warring in her eyes. Justice had never felt so intimate. The echo of Grandma's old gavel kept over the mantel since her days as a circuit court clerk seemed to reverberate through that clearing in the woods. Grandpa closed his statement by reminding Karen that true neighbors protect each other, not weaponize rules to bully the vulnerable. The deputies thanked him, their stern nods sealing the moment. Karen slumped, her posture collapsing like a deflated balloon, as if the weight of every lie she'd ever told pinned her to the earth. That afternoon, the local news crew arrived, cameras rolling as Grandpa recounted the incident for their evening broadcast. His voice, gentle yet unwavering, spoke of community and respect, painting Karen's tirade as a cautionary tale against the poison of entitlement. Viewers across the county watched in awe as he ended with a simple plea: let compassion be your guide. The clip went viral, shared by thousands who saw in Grandpa's composure a reminder that courage need not shout, it simply stands firm. 2 days later, the HOA board convened an emergency meeting. Karen, once the self-styled enforcer of neighborhood perfection, faced a torrent of complaints and demands for her removal. Her resignation letter, penned with trembling hands, cited personal reasons, but everyone knew the truth. Her empire of unfair fines and midnight intimidation had crumbled under one man's unflashy integrity. In the weeks that followed, cabins across the ridge displayed handmade signs reading "Real power lies in honor," a tribute to Grandpa's legacy. Neighbors who had once cowered under Karen's gaze now greeted each other with warm nods and open doors. The guest who sparked the confrontation, a college student researching local forestry, returned to the cabin and hugged Grandpa, tears in her eyes, grateful that his stand had preserved the sanctuary of her scholarship retreat. At the county courthouse, news crews captured the moment when Karen's eviction appeal was dismissed, the judge citing the viral testimony as key evidence of her misconduct. As Grandpa stepped out of the courtroom, reporters pressed microphones toward him, but he simply tipped his hat and said, "We did what was right." The crowd's cheer felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Today, that cabin sits as a symbol not of conflict, but of resilience born from truth. Neighbors gather there for potlucks under string lights, sharing stories of how one man's quiet defiance rekindled their sense of shared humanity. I invite you, reader, to tell me, was Grandpa's response the justice we deserve, or did it demand more than a community should ask of one man? Please share your thoughts, right or wrong. Grandpa's quiet resolve set off a ripple that spread through our mountain enclave like wildfire licking at dry brush. Word of the viral courtroom footage reached every cabin and chalet along the winding roads, kindling conversations over backyard fences and after-church coffees about the limits of entitlement and the power of standing for what's right. At dawn the day after Karen's courtroom defeat, I found neighbors replacing the chipped HOA notice board at the trailhead with fresh oak planks etched by hand. Community built on trust, not fear. The board bore no mention of grand declarations or moralizing slogans, just a simple reminder that our bonds as neighbors must be stronger than any rulebook. Inside our cabin, Grandpa tucked away his gavel by the mantel, its brass plate catching the morning light, and turned to me with a soft smile. "It wasn't me they needed to see," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "It was the truth." I realized then that the biggest triumph wasn't in the legal documents or the HOA meeting minutes but in the shift of hearts and minds. On weekends, families who once tiptoed past our shoreline now gathered on the dock, splashing grandchildren and sharing cinnamon rolls as though the specter of division had never darkened our doors. A local artisan even carved a miniature replica of our cabin from fallen cedar branches, mounted on a plaque that read, "Sanctuary of Integrity." Meanwhile, Karen retreated into self-imposed exile, her reputation in tatters. I heard rumors of her living in a distant town under a pseudonym, attending mandatory anger management courses and apologizing to neighbors she never truly wronged. Though the county had barred her from running for any future HOA positions, her fall from grace taught everyone a lesson more lasting than any fine or filing fee. People spoke less of HOA bylaws and more of neighborly goodwill, helping Mrs. Alvarez fix her sagging fence, bringing hot soup to the family down the road when their pipes froze, even volunteering at the local Forest Watch program to safeguard our pine groves. What began as Grandpa's loan stand blossomed into a movement that transcended our little community. Teams from neighboring counties reached out to learn our story, eager to replicate a system that prioritized respect over regulation. I remember loading folders of documented testimony as deputies' notes, neighbor affidavits, even digital footprints of Karen's own complaints into a presentation binder that I carried to a regional HOA conference. As I spoke before dozens of board members and property managers, I watched eyes widen and pins scratch furiously. They weren't just taking notes. They were absorbing a blueprint for empathy-driven governance. Back home, the college student whose research had unwittingly sparked the drama returned, her thesis on sustainable forestry enriched by the camaraderie she found here. She delivered a lecture at the community center, weaving in Grandpa's ethos. When people feel valued and included, they protect what they love. Under her guidance, volunteers planted saplings to replace trees felled by last winter's storms, each stake marked with a name and a date, a testament to collective action. And in the evenings, as fireflies flickered across the meadow, couples strolled hand in hand along the winding paths, recounting the day's work and marveling at how one man's courage had kindled such unity. Reflecting on it all, I realized the deeper twist hidden in our saga. It wasn't just Karen's downfall that resonated. It was the unmasking of fear itself. Too often we let fear whisper that differences divide us, that rules are shields against uncertainty, that silence is safer than speaking out. But Grandpa's calm defiance showed us that the braver path is to confront fear with kindness, lies with truth, and isolation with community. That realization turned our cabin into more than a retreat. It became a living classroom where every sunrise offered a lesson on trust, every snowfall a chance to navigate challenges together, and every shared meal an affirmation of belonging. Even the wild deer that browsed at the forest's edge seemed to acknowledge the change. They lingered longer by the clearing, unafraid of footsteps, trusting the peace that now defined these woods. And as seasons shifted, so did our traditions. What began as an annual HOA potluck evolved into a festival of gratitude, complete with lanterns floating on the lake and ribbons tied to trees inscribed with hopes for the year ahead. Neighbors of every generation contributed. Grandpa oversaw the lighting ceremony, the college student orchestrated the lantern designs, and children tucked their wishes into ribbon bows fluttering in the breeze. Karen's empty cabin sat at the festival's edge, silent witness to the joy she once tried to suppress. On the eve of the festival, I walked past that cabin and paused. The door hung ajar, as if inviting the ghosts of our past to witness the new dawn. I considered stapling a final notice property under new stewardship. All are welcome, but decided against it. Instead, I stepped away, confident that the sense of belonging we'd forged needed no sign to declare it. As the first lanterns rose into the starlit sky, carrying the collective hopes and promises of a healed community, I felt a swell of gratitude for the tumultuous journey that led us here. In the end, the most powerful comeback wasn't Grandpa's courtroom testimony, nor the viral video that humbled a bully. It was the quiet, persistent bloom of empathy and solidarity that spread through every heart on these mountain slopes. So tell me, reader, was Grandpa's act of courage enough to reshape an entire neighborhood? Or does true justice demand an even higher standard? Share your thoughts, right or wrong.